What's up, family? Salud, cheers. Welcome back to another interview in the series Primal Polarity. And I'm bringing back on the amazing brother, Pure Jaguar. I don't know if some of you caught our first video, but it was a banger. We're going to be talking again about natural law, about metaphysics, healing, shadow work, masculinity, all the things. And the first interview was so good that we had to do this brother back. If you're not aware of Pure Jaguar and his work, definitely go follow him, go check him out on here after this interview. And stay here. There he is. We're in another mind-blowing session.
Yeah, last one was good, man. Yeah, last one was good. I enjoyed the last one. I'm sick again though. I'm in a city. Yeah, I went to Sydney because my partner and I, we don't live in a city area. We live in Byron Bay in New South Wales, Australia. And we went down to Sydney a couple of months ago and we got sick when we got there. And now we've come down to Melbourne City for a holiday and we've gotten sick as well. So I'm not sure if we're getting bombarded by you know what, but yeah, it's interesting. So yeah, it's all good though apart from that. How are you doing?
Shit, man. Well, hope you feel better. I know you got all the tools. I'm doing pretty amazing. I'm over here in the Hawaii of Australia, Bali. Not so far.
Nice.
So it's a pretty rainy day in Ubud, but it's a beautiful one.
Nice, man. Good stuff.
Yeah, so let's dive right in. I'd love to hear a little bit about, do you work with your partner actively? I saw y'all were offering something, or you were sharing one of her offerings.
Yeah, we haven't yet. We've been dancing around it for a little while to see how we could do it. The nice thing about us is that we're kind of like, I'm not a big fan of like science, so to speak, but I'm quite objective, right? Because I think modern Western science is very much about follow the money. There's a funny meme where it's like science, what it's following, and it's a dude with a microscope with a bunch of money, holding a bunch of money. So we live in an age now where we worship synthetic intellect over spiritual intelligence. And so the balance, or the yin and yang, with my partner, Luna, and I, she's very much the medicine woman, shamanic, earthy. She operates in other worlds. And I'm kind of the same, but in the opposite direction. I'm very much like physics, objective, language, really sort of precise and extremely accurate in the way. I'm like a sniper, right? And she's more of the spiritual aspect. She accesses the other worlds. But it's like there's the saying, all roads lead to Rome. We get to a similar place. We just arrive through different pathways. So we haven't done anything yet. We want to, though. So we're thinking about doing a podcast. We were talking about this a couple of nights ago, where we actually get the audience to ask us what they want us to talk about. And then we give both our perspectives on her experience and my experience as well. So we think we might do that. Yeah,
I love that. I mean, Terrence McKenna has an amazing rap on this, who is a deep student of, shamanism and psychedelic, techniques of ecstasy. And, he basically calls scientism, or the materialistic view, its own religion. Because if you talk to someone today who just believes that matter is the only thing that's real, science studies consciousness, can't account for it or describe it, which is kind of comical when you think about it, because consciousness is the one doing the science.
Yeah, exactly.
And will completely deny things like near-death experiences, mystical experiences, psychedelic visions, as this is all just brain chemistry, right? None of this has a reality outside of your own mind, which is at best a function of neuronal firing, and at worst a mental illness, which we can then sell you a pill for, right? Totally. And this worldview has left us bankrupt in the realm of the heart and the realm of the spirit, which is the most personal, real thing that we all experience.
Yeah.
You really get down to it. Why do you think that is? How did we get into this situation?
Money, really, and to take us away from our individual spirituality. So, we look at things like, this is a bit more controversial, but I mean, I go down a lot of rabbit holes and stuff like that. And so if we live in this giant cosmic soup of infinite nothingness, right, and we're just an accident, then it automatically divorces us from our concept of spirit. So the materialist reductionists, there's this one therapist, what's her name? I think it's Jordan Ann or something like that. She had a whole post around the chemical structure of love. And it completely takes away from any sort of divinity or, sacredness to it into boiled down into like, okay, what you're really doing is just experiencing three chemicals through your nervous system. And it just kind of takes away all the magic behind the real divine intelligence that actually brings all this about. And if we're living in a society that's completely divorced from its spiritual intelligence and worshipping synthetic intellect, then what we become is these like automatons, which is what we're moving towards anyway, which is this AI mainframe kind of lifestyle, where we get divorced from any kind of concept of God or divine sacredness or anything like that. So then what that means is that we start to actually be able to become less valuing of our fellow human being. We don't tap into love. We want to just understand what everything is from a reductionist point of view. We want to say, follow the science, trust the science. No one says question the science. Everyone just says trust the science, which is almost, it's dogmatic in a way. You know, it's like believing something without it actually being proven. And this is in science. Science is, you don't actually have to prove the theory, you have to disprove it. And there's Russell's teapot and the flying spaghetti monster, which is like, there's a teapot that's out, I think it's between Mars and, you know, Jupiter or something like that. And it's too close for us to see through our telescopes, but it's too far away for us to see with any modern technology. This was formed a while ago, so it was about the technology then. So you can't say that it's not there because you can't disprove it, but you can't see it actually there, but there's a theory that it is there. So you've got to disprove the theory rather than actually prove the theory being accurate. That's really what a lot of science has been based on for a long time. And so if we're always just trying to prove something wrong or something right, then it leaves out the mystical and the divine aspect to it. So I think it's there to divorce us from one another and create that separation, which we see in the world at the moment.
Totally. A lot of this stuff goes all the way back to Aristotle. It goes back to Descartes, who says, you know, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am.
Therefore I am, yeah.
Very devastating statement, because basically saying that synthetic intellect or the mental consciousness is the only consciousness. That's the I am present, which goes against every other ancient spiritual religious tradition of all antiquity, which was deeply invested in this idea that spirit and matter are not separate. And quantum physics now, what's crazy is you go to Niels Bohr, you know, Heisenberg, Einstein, the Copenhagen hypothesis, all those guys 100 years ago that are studying essentially math, all were deeply mystical. A lot of them knew Carl Jung personally, and it's no coincidence that the psychological breakthroughs around the unconscious, around dreams and synchronicity were happening at the same time as quantum mechanics and, you know, the entanglement theory, like Bell's theorem. So what's funny is that science actually has in some ways proven, in a very abstract way, the spiritual hypothesis that everything is alive, matter is not, you know, dead, it's not inert, it's filled with meaning, and the human nervous system is the most beautiful instrument and spiritual temple to actually experience that. And I'm curious, like, where does this fall for you in terms of what is it going to take for men and women that want to be healthy, alive, and bring in the divine to like shift this theory? Do we have to completely just walk away from these institutions and these absurd theories that our friends and family are kind of caught up in, whether they like it or not?
I think it's just like, you know, there's this religious dogma about science, and that's the new aspect that we're moving into. It all serves its purpose on some level, but what the difference is like there's knowing, which is intellect, and gnosis, which is intelligence, right? Intelligence is an ever-expanding, ever-forming, cascading, you know, set of packet points of data which overflow into our ability to be able to receive it. Whereas knowing, which is intellect, we become stuck there. This is why you see a lot of people, they get really caught up in the fact that they know stuff because they hear it somewhere else. And we see this, the people that are fed, you know, mainstream media lies, mainstream scientism lies, all that sort of stuff. They think that they know because they're just regurgitating the information. So there's no embodied wisdom behind it, which is the gnosis of the integration of the information with the actual realization, and it becomes unified. So I don't know if we need to fully walk away from it. What we need to walk away from is the people that are dictating the results. You know, we look at, I had this guy, like we went back and forth for a little bit, and he was sending me stuff on the climate change agenda. And all his sources were like The Guardian, CNN, shit like that. And he's fighting for it, man. And I'm just like, you know, it's like in the world, we see the big main narratives. It's always something that's kind of like, you know, it's kind of there, but kind of isn't that accurate. Like climate change, yeah, the weather's heating up. You could attribute that to almost any day, right? And it goes in cycles and things like that. Same with COVID, it's got the same, you know, symptoms as a flu. And so we're getting all of these mainstream narratives from mainstream sources, which are funded by people that control the strings of information. So I think those things, yes, we need to walk away from, like the mainstream media, the ridiculous breakfast shows out there, the mainstream news, all of that shit, and start to look at what is actually true for us through our nervous systems, through our experience, through our gnosis, through our intelligence, and through our expanded awareness, and what becomes true for us. Like, all you got to do is go watch a sunrise, you know, or look at, you know, baby animals and things like that. And you can see the inherent magic in that. And Zach Bush talks about this, where he said, you know, love is not the fabric of everything, beauty is. And our reaction to witnessing the beauty is love. And that's the inherent dance between the personal interplay with the divine. And that's where we realize that we're not separate from that.
Right. And this to me is, you know, the whole follow the money thing is real. And it's kind of concerning that, you know, these huge shadowy asset managers like BlackRock being probably the biggest one, you know, not only do they own the pharmaceutical companies, they own the laboratories and fund the research, and they own the media that reports on it.
Yeah.
So at some point you have to just ask from a pure logical place and a deep knowing, like, what's going on here? Like, is this actually about truth and, you know, freedom of like choice? Can we actually choose? And like you said, disprove using the scientific method, which science is amazing. Science has led to things like the iPhone and the, you know, the automobile and the airplane, the things that have greatly enhanced human thriving on the planet. And yet, what is it all for? I always go to the why. Like, why are we doing this? Why do we have these tools and tech? And what is it actually doing for our lived experience, not the idea of something?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's always around the why. You just keep asking what for or why. You just keep going back with that, and then you start to break things down to a finite level. And I always say about any mainstream narrative shouldn't just be questioned. It should be treated with the utmost scrutiny and discernment. We're seeing so many things now around the narratives that are like, oh yeah, we kind of made a mistake and this and that. Yeah, people will just buy the next thing. It's madness, because fear drives panic choices. When we're in fear, we can't make a clear decision. I posted this the other day. It was more around conflict, where I said, high emotions when in conflict equates to low intelligence, meaning that when someone's really triggered, upset or angry or in fear, they're not going to make a really smart, reasoned, intelligent decision. One that's going to be clear, concise, cogent, rational, and sensible. And I had quite a few people on there, especially one woman going, no, this makes no sense, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, just read the post. A lot of people get like that on my post. They don't read the actual word for word thing. And I say, like, this is why there's the saying, cooler heads prevail. When we're in conflict, we step away till we calm down. We move forward. Like when my partner and I, if we get into conflict, we'll move into like hugging each other to get as close as we can for 5 minutes or something, whether that's before or after. And so we just start to dissipate. And even if we get through the conflict, then we'll hug afterwards and come as close as possible, right? So these are the important things that we really need to understand when we're looking at things that we want to buy into, so to speak. Who's telling us? Like the pharma companies, as you were saying. I mean, Pfizer's had a $2.9 billion fine for criminal misconduct. Like, Are you serious that you would still believe that that company has your best interests at heart when they're driven by profit? They're not driven by customers being lost, which would mean they'd be healed. They're driven by more customers being dependent on the products that they're selling to you. So for me, it's just common sense. I mean, you don't even really need to ask the why in that, Kevin. It's just like, it's right fucking there. And you go, well, I'm not going to trust that. Why would I do that? You know, so that's an important level of discernment that we have to use towards those companies as well.
Totally. And I think the gift of Corona and a lot of the beauty of the internet, which is like instant communication, with what Marshall McLuhan called the global village. You know, it's this electronic village where we can just, boom, it's on Twitter, it's on Instagram. You know, we can spread information to the best of our ability through the, you know, censorship and et cetera. But it's instantly available and instantly questioned, depending on who you're consuming, of course, and what channels, whatever. But it's there. And so everyone has a responsibility. And for me, I have compassion for folks that are, you know, struggling and really into XYZ narrative. But I also I know because of the law of free will, that you're going to have to ultimately make a decision. And
Yeah.
you're going to have to choose what you want. And direct experience is king. Not testimony, not some white paper that some guy got paid to write about
Yeah.
XYZ agenda. You know, and climate change is an interesting one. And there's so many out right now that, you know, I feel like it's what's the current thing, right? Like everyone wants to latch onto the current thing. And I don't know if you're familiar with Rene Girard and his work around the mob psychology and mimesis, which is basically what people either want. I want, it's kind of like the 100 monkey problem, where each human sees like, oh, they want this, you know, this is what the narrative is, so I need to join the mob to gain a sense of identity. And this is quite dangerous, especially, you know, online now, because the rampancy of this. And I'm curious, I know a lot of my friends from Australia that have, you know, left and come back, etc., talk about this thing of the tall poppy
syndrome. Yeah.
Aware of it. What's your take on that? And have you personally experienced this mob psychology?
Oh, heaps over here. You know, like, I mean, he's a good friend of mine, but like when I was moving out into therapy, I didn't finish my degree because I knew I had to go it alone and figure out my own system. And he was blowing up because I hadn't finished my degree. He's like, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't go out there and do it. So it's like people will always want you to do well, but never better than them. We see this even in like communities of like men, right? When you've got multiple successful men in one thing, there's going to be this alpha psychology. I don't like the terms alpha and beta and all that, but there's this like alpha psychology where if one person is dominant in, say, physical, the other one's dominant in intellect, the other one's dominant in success, we'll see the like dynamics play out as though the one that might not be able to get them over in, like, say, the group setting is more of like a intellectual, intelligent group. And if there's like another one that isn't really as good as that, they'll use other tactics to try and maintain the dominance, right? And this happens all the time. But tall poppy syndrome here happens a lot. You know, I was in contact with my first girlfriend after an ayahuasca journey last year. And it's been, you know, 26 years or something since I spoke to her. I was like 13 or something at the time, 14 at the time. And she was like, oh, I'm just so shocked that you've become who you are. I'm like, why? And she goes, oh, because it was just so crazy when we were dating, blah, 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 blah. And I said, I've been on the planet longer now than I had been at the time I dated you. And she goes, oh, but I just never would have seen that you would have made a success of yourself. And it's really shocking to see that. Rather than celebrating it, going, hey, like, that's so amazing what you've done, she was trying to bring me back down, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, because she couldn't believe that the vision and the idea that she had of me through her own lens is now completely dissolved. So then she couldn't sit there and go, oh, well, you know, we were 14 or something like that. So, I mean, we're still holding on to that at, you know, 40 years old. That's different stuff they're holding on to. But the difference is like not a lot of people here celebrate another person's success genuinely. They might say it, most of the time they're full of shit, but I've helped people around me to success, you know, to get them to further success. My close friends around it. You know, I teach all of them. I'm like, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to do. Go do this so they can be successful. But I'm a rare breed in that aspect. Like I said, most people want you to do well, but not better than them. And when you're outshining them, you have to sort of, especially in Australia, you have to move on. You just have to move on. And I've done that multiple times where I wasn't in alignment with people because they were still trying to bring me down a bit. And I'm like, fuck this, I'm out, you know? And so I've experienced it, but I'm very much like, I don't give a shit what people think, because they're really going to be only looking through the prism of their own trauma. It'll be like if you're in a relationship and then, you know, if you've had a tense relationship and then the friends know about it, the friends like, you shouldn't be with that person, you shouldn't be with that person. I'm like, well, your fucking relationship's not very good, so what are you talking about? Like, you know, leave it alone. Everyone's on their own journey. And so just to allow people to have their own experience is really important and not get involved without the opinion of that, because everyone's trying to, it's like the boiling crabs analogy, right? Everyone's trying to do the same thing as that. Where one crab tries to get out, the rest of them will pull them back in. And that's where the saying is misery loves company. And I've had that. I've been attacked for my success, for, you know, I remember one guy rang me, goes, I don't believe that you can get rid of, you know, my trauma in 3 sessions. And I'm like, that's all right. My beliefs don't require you to, you know, but it's just that. It's so important. And yeah, we get that pack mentality here in a big way.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is rampant and it's part of human psychology. And again, compassion is kind of the keystone through this. Is like,
yeah,
when someone feels that your success is a threat to them, which is just simply not true on a pure factual basis, because that's a scarcity, deeply scarce mentality, right? That's their
Yeah.
nervous system saying, I don't know if I'm safe if this person got theirs because I haven't
Yeah.
gotten mine.
Yeah.
So instead of like, you know, well, maybe that should inspire me and like maybe there's things I can learn from this. It's like, no, like come back to a place where I can feel safe. And there's this
Yeah.
brilliant, I don't know who shared this, but it's basically like, it was some holistic psychologist saying a lot of people will only, like your past girlfriend, as you were sharing, they'll only see you, and this is a pure like projected image of what they see you as the version they knew you as when they were equal or above you in their
Yeah.
estimation, right?
Yeah.
And they can't even see the new version of you. What do you
Yeah.
have to say to that?
Yeah. And they don't want to, right? They don't want to see you as a different person. It's like we have this like programming in our subconscious, right? And they're like a prism, right? Prism, PRSIM. So it's like when light hits a prism, you know, if it whenever the light interacts with the objects, it'll reflect out a similar shape. Okay, so it's like you see light, if it interacts with a glass dome, it'll be a rainbow shape, right? If it's a triangle or a pyramid, it'll refract off onto the wall in like a similar sort of shape, right? The same way that if people are limited by the view in the subconscious, then they're going to see people in a certain way, in the way that they need them to be. Because what happens is then there's this threat that that person's value is identified by the other person that they're viewing who used to be the same as them, and then it starts to activate all of their insecurity or scarcity or, you know, failures or inadequacy, whatever it is. And that's very real. And so that version of them is being reflected as the opportunity to either grow or through the problem that they haven't grown. And most people, problem and opportunity is the same thing. It's two sides of the same coin, in my opinion, but one activates more of the victim mindset. One is more of like the powerful mindset of like, well, I have an opportunity, right? It's like I was having a conversation around this, just to go a little bit off topic, around the difference between wealth and abundance this morning. And I'm going to write about it actually, because I don't really deal with money a lot. I do with people, but it's just a byproduct. Wealth, most people think of something that they can consume, something material. Like this person I was working with thought of men in suits. And I'm like, that's more power, right? And I said, what do you think when I say abundance? And she said, trees. And I said, and what do trees do? And she said, sustain life. I said, and who births life? And she says, the mother. I'm like, Mother Nature, that's the feminine. So most of the time money is related to the feminine side, not the masculine side. Consumption and wealth and power is on more of the masculine side, but true like money aspects and that kind of issue that people face will usually be directly correlated with an absence of love that they haven't experienced. And so that person is experienced this opportunity to either love the person for growing and being happy for them, or being more of like the miserable person that's unhappy for someone's success. And those people start to become almost cancerous in a way if you don't cut them out.
Right. And this is the tough part of the path of realization, or the awakening path, is you will outgrow these people very quickly if you are really dedicated to the work. And this can be really painful, especially if they're friends, family, or partners, because you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And there is a real metaphysical field that's around you. So if people aren't celebrating your wins, I mean, I remember this when I first left Texas to move to California. You know, I was like, oh, I'm going to go into entrepreneurship. I'm going to be a writer. I'm going to blog. You know, I'm studying all this stuff about building a website. And almost everyone, even though they were dear brothers, we shared all these amazing experiences, not a single person was cheering for me. It was pure fear projected onto me. It was like, dude, like, what are you going to do for money? And how can you do this? Like, are you sure you're going to be okay? And I don't know if that's really a good idea. And it was so painful because the people I most wanted to, you know, cheer me on and hopefully join me on this adventure, like obviously you do it in your own way, we're doing the exact opposite. And that was a really bitter lesson. And when you take that hero's journey, when you take the leap, you will find others that are surrounding you that have done that path. And there's a great piece of wisdom, I don't know who said it, but I will never take criticism from someone I wouldn't take advice from.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, and that's really important. You know, it's like one of the things that I've come to be very comfortable with is moving in and out of groups with people, right? So I find that they come in, they serve their purpose, and then the alignment doesn't work anymore. And then it's like, okay, cool, I can just move on. But a lot of people find security in that, and especially a lot in the men's world as well. You know, like there's, you need a brotherhood, you need this, but alpha dynamics can play out in that. Subordinate dynamics can play out, things like that, which can be really unhealthy if they haven't been dealt with. And so you've got to be okay to wish people well and go, it's okay. You know, you're having your experience and I care enough about you to let you have your experience of me without me needing to change it for you. So someone might have an opinion of you and it could be wrong. And you go, that's right, man. I love you that much. I'll be that person for you. It's okay. I don't need to change that. Move on. There's so many people in the world and there's so many opportunities. And so it's really important about who you want to call in, right? So the men that I like to have around me have to be like, you know, coaches. They have to be doing the work. They have to be, I would prefer to be around men that are in really beautiful relationships with their women, that really honor them and that respect them and that are honest about what goes on, you know, like all of that stuff. Like everyone thinks that we have perfect relationships. No one does. No one does. There are times where you feel insecure, you feel scared, you feel hurt, you feel sad. That's part of the human condition, and to honor that. And those are the sort of men that I like to be around, ones that are actually embodying the work and doing it. And maybe they have kids, maybe they're in a beautiful partnership, they respect women, they're not sleeping around, they're not doing drugs, all that sort of stuff. I'm like, I'm not interested. So I'd rather be alone than dedicating my time to people that have that kind of mentality, because otherwise I'm just wasting my time in the world. And that's really important. If someone's going to try to tear me down or bring me down or keep me there, that's just like a slingshot. And when they let go, I'm just going to move away even faster. And that's really important, I think.
Right, 100%. The slingshot or pulling back the arrow effect, like all that, the negativity and like the kind of like that crab in the bucket. If you can break free from the inertia, which is as simple as choosing that, you actually gain momentum. So nature has that beautiful evolutionary pressure that it will give to you as a boon. I want to talk more about, go for it.
Yeah, just on that, just quickly. It's more important to break free from the version of you that needed them in your life to show you that, as opposed to breaking free from them for everyone that's listening. The relationship is always with yourself.
Totally. Good word there. Let's talk about hierarchy, because you already mentioned it with men specifically in the masculine.
Yeah.
The alpha dynamics, the dominance, like the pecking order, which is found everywhere in nature. You know, Jordan Peterson is the legend on this, where he's studied this clinically, and you can see this across all, you know, primates obviously, but for human beings too. What are your thoughts on, like, you know, people saying, oh, like smash the patriarchy, all that, but at the same time, when men gather, prowess, skill, experience is highly valuable. So there's a reason that a man has gotten his station, or he is really successful in relating, or he has the intellectual success or the financial success, and we can't do away with hierarchy. And at the same time, we don't want to be in that pissing contest of who's more alpha. What is your read on that? Especially when I know you've worked with a lot of successful men, and like in your background, having been in the corporate professional world and also now in the healing space and the coaching world, what would you say to men who want to navigate that in a good way and actually have that positive masculine hierarchy?
I think, like, and this is an important thing, and I was speaking to this in my group container that I do, and there are a couple of questions around confidence. Confidence is a time generator, so it starts to produce time. So if it's like, confidence is like an athlete, right? I'm going to go out and I'm going to win the game, but they haven't played the game yet. Okay, so this is the old sort of false alpha, which is like, confident, and we see this in, like, you know, the term game and all that sort of stuff, and pickup artistry and red pill culture, which I think all that's pretty toxic. And we look at the word confident, right? So you'll get these beta males that are pretending to be alphas, adopting techniques of alphas, and they get a woman that is not in line with the internal view that they have of themselves through manipulation, through manipulative confidence. And then what happens is 3-6 months down the track, the woman goes, wait, you're not the alpha that I thought I was dating. They leave, they get their heart broken, and they might kill themselves, right? So there's confidence, which is the time generator that I need to challenge my belief by overcoming it with an energy that I think that I'm someone that I'm not at the subconscious level. But I always replace that with authenticity, right? Confidence and authenticity are two very different things. I think authenticity is the ultimate confidence, that I'm comfortable with who I am. You can feel that energy in someone that's not afraid to be honest, someone that's not afraid to, you know, just step up and be that person. And you'll find that a lot of the people that are genuine leaders don't want to lead, they're called to lead. And they're the men that are truly authentic. The other ones are dominant, that need subordinate people underneath them in order to maintain their own sense of self-validation and importance. And so I think that's really important to note that, because in healthy dynamics, authenticity, as you've seen, will be creative. Men build things, they move towards things, they collaborate. We're collaborating now. There's not this challenge about who's smarter, who knows more, who has to appear better. We're just having an authentic conversation. And I think that's where you get two guys that are really in there. They're sort of masculine and that real alpha dynamic from a real perspective, because alpha is not just about the physical strength, which it really is associated with in the animal kingdom. It's about, and that's through dominance and strength and who's got the most chemical testosterone and whatever. It's more about intelligence, purpose, you know. A gentleness, I think, is a big one as well. There's strength in it. There's intellect too. There's sexual prowess that comes into it as well. And all those things, once you've got those as a melting pot, then you can stand comfortable whether you're above people or alone. It won't matter, you know. And that's where like the Sigma male stuff comes in, which is like the Sigma's an alpha that doesn't need to dominate people. Whereas an alpha actually needs people underneath them to be subordinate to them to gain their own sense of satisfaction and validation. That's the false confidence that we see. And so I think that's really important to note that a real man that's actually confident, knows what he's doing, that will admit his mistakes. You see a lot of these accounts showing up online, like Wisdom of Kings is really good. I love his writing. I don't know if you follow him. And a few people like that, they come from a really authentic place. So that just automatically generates people that want to follow them because they're speaking from the heart. And I think that's really the concept of what a true alpha is. It's not about brains. It's not about brawn, and just physical size. Because, I mean, you look at Jordan Peterson. He's not this big, strong, muscular guy, but intellectually, he's incredibly intimidating to a lot of people on the planet, feminists included. So the feminist movement really identified with the smash the patriarchy thing, but they're just doing to men what they claim men have done to them by controlling and dominating. And that whole movement was developed in the Frankfurt School in Germany in 1923 with the deliberate introduction that men were the oppressors and women were the oppressed. But having to maintain some sort of independence by blaming men only puts them back in the subservient position that they say they don't want to be in the first place. So there's a lot of mechanics in and around that, around both of that we could talk to. But yeah, that's what I think about the real alpha, which is authenticity, versus the false alpha, which is the confidence, which is a time generator, which is in conflict with your own beliefs about who you are.
Brought up so many amazing points there. And this whole idea around, you know, the social construct of class, of gender, and what you said, like the Frankfurt School, and this deliberate, you know, it's really interesting if you study that history. That's a whole rabbit hole of why these ideas were introduced and then spread through universities and then spread through the liberal intellectual classes that go into law, medicine, media, politics, which are those main forces that are not just oppressing women. They're oppressing the human free spirit and will. And men and women have always been symbiotic, dealing with life, raising families, you know, growing their frame of life, right? A life-sustaining abundance, whether it's money, love, children. And it's not about men versus women. So to me, this is yet another divide and conquer tactic. And I don't know how it is in Australia, but the postmodern feminist movement has done more damage, I think, to women and to the men that love them than any other, like, you know, terrible, like abusive, you know, you could prop up any leader or tyrant and say, oh, they've done this, but this is masquerading as like a virtue signal, which is why it's so insidious.
I mean, 100%. If the feminist movement, you know, they're like, women should leave men and not live with men. One of them, I can't remember if it was fourth wave or second wave, I can't remember, but she said we should basically kill all men on the planet. Like, can you imagine if we went out and said that we should just kill all women on the planet? But that's radical feminism is disguised as this healthy movement, but it's the same as toxic masculinity, you know. And we see just even the narratives around this stuff that go on, like around the fierceness, like women have sacred rage, but men get angry and it's toxic. Anger and rage are the same thing. Rage is time-based, so it's accumulated anger. So these terms that we throw on it, like sacred rage, and anger is, you know, toxic masculinity, but rage is sacred feminine. It's the same stuff. Like, we look at anger and emotions, they're more of the feminine energetics, but then the action is more masculine, right? So feminine, will produce aggression, which is masculine. Aggression will lead to violence, which is masculine, which usually leads to regret, which is feminine. So it's like a chain that we run through in that. And it's done a complete disservice because we're getting so many women that are entering their 40s going, I was a career woman, I was this, that, and then they're left with this sense of like, you know, emptiness because they weren't really moving towards what was their deepest essence. But there's also, like, we see it in movies now. I saw, like, you know, I went and saw a movie last night and there was the ad for the new Black Panther and all the women are warriors. They're all bald, by the way, and got a shaved head. So it's like, it's typically a male trait. And there's another woman coming out called Woman King or something like that. And it's like, you know, it's producing this legion of women going, women are the warriors, you know, this and that and all that. It's like, and one of the things that come out a lot that I hear is that there's nothing so fierce or dangerous on the planet as a woman protecting a child. Maybe if you're a fucking grizzly bear, but if you got a man with a gun or that's trained or whatever, that woman's not going to be able to do anything against that. And that's the reality of it. We're built differently. Our bones are thicker. Our muscles are stronger for a reason. And that's because we're supposed to be more of the warrior style. But now it's like women are doing everything based on trying to be men, which the feminist movement has done to them. And it's been an attack on masculinity and its attack on femininity based on a small substrate of people that are 0.00001% of the population, that are their men in power. But if you look at the men in power, they're actually extremely feminine. They're white hair, they're fat, they've got man boobs, they're unhealthy, they're gross. And they're typically more of like the effeminate males that are actually in power that need to dominate and control and want to control people, because real men don't need to do that.
That's it. And this is one of the deepest things I'm seeing so much. And I ask people all the time in interviews, my client containers, like, do you believe there is a war on masculinity? And do you believe there's a war on femininity? I think they're co-equal, and whatever warped reality people can get sucked into with this stuff. And there's this idea that, you know, to be a loving protector as a man, you need to be dangerous. You can't be this effeminate, like very manipulative leader, which you described. Most of the leaders, I saw a stat the other day, the US Congress, the legislature, like the number of 70-year-olds and up is at an all-time high. It's like we're led by the least among us. And the way they lead is not through, you know, prowess and intellect and masculine provision and protection, leading by example, the Sigma mentality, not needing dominance. They're leading through basically manipulation and, you know, psychosis, mass psychosis, weaponization of information. And this is not what we want to see at all. And what would you say to this idea that really, like, we have to return, in a sense, we have to go backwards to go forwards? Not that we need to go back to traditional gender roles in like the 1950s, like workaholic and housewife, but there is this movement, I think, all over the planet right now. You mentioned some of these accounts and some of these folks speaking about it, of basically men and women coming back into the ancestral dynamic. And like you said, women that are in their 40s that are childless and, you know, have a big bank account, but they're depressed or on medication. Men who are, you know, effeminate or they feel emasculated and they are having to, you know, use red pill or use these kind of like false techniques to become alpha. Like, what is the renaissance for men and women here in 2022 moving forward?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think it's more coming back to, I mean, like the red pill culture is super toxic. It takes in just biology, right? So the biology of all that is going to really land for a lot of people. And some of that might be true, you know, but there's the concept of hypergamy in that culture, which is that women will marry up or choose up for a man that can provide security and support. And I know someone's like, oh yeah, like, you know, women are just hypergamous monkey branches. But I'm like, yeah, but the man that gets into his 40s or 50s that's been married for 20 years will have an affair with the hot secretary. It's the same fucking thing. Sorry. My battery's just running out. I got 20% left, but we should make it. So it's the same thing, right? It's like, if a man's going to trade up to a hotter version of the woman that he's with, there's no difference between that as a woman being hypergamous that wants more security in a man. So I think they're the same thing, but women get a bad bash of it because they like jump and monkey branch from next to next, right? So I think that needs to be addressed. And it's like also in that culture, which is really unhealthy. It's a bunch of boys that are running around that are too scared to open up their heart to really step in to commit because they've been hurt before. And I mean, I've been one of those people, not in the full-on red pill thing, but I've been scared to open up before because of the way I grew up with my mother. So it's difficult for me to trust women. And that's been a lifelong journey for me to understand. I don't mind admitting that. But they're basically like, you know, I had one guy call himself a low-level alpha that was almost 50. And I'm like, what are you talking about? An alpha doesn't call himself an alpha. Like, it's ridiculous, but it's all based on this red pill toxic narrative bullshit. And so that's the extreme other end of the misandry, which is like there's misogyny, which is, you know, men that hate women. And there's misandry, which women that hate men. And so it's the two sides of the same coin, really. It's both just people that have been hurt that are too scared to open up. So I think the traditional aspect of it is to get rid of like the hookup culture. You know, I always say to people that you're learning the lessons in the classroom of kindergarten, you know, because kindergarten is like a bunch of wounded children running around that are 6 years old, looking desperately for validation. I saw this woman post, someone posted a woman on TikTok or something, and she said, I dare you to try and slut shame me. I've slept with almost 1,000 men, 987 to be exact. Slut shame me, go on, I dare you. And it's just like, wow. 987 men that she's been with. Her womb would be a toxic nuclear waste site. That'd be like a nuclear winter in there energetically. And my partner works with stuff like that and does womb cleansing and womb healing, and which is really powerful for women because it becomes a toxic dumping ground. So I'd say be discerning. You know, be committed to your partnerships. Work through the childhood trauma, which makes you afraid of commitment or makes you scared to move into something, because really that's it. And that's where the open and poly communities come in, because they're all afraid of commitment. I don't care what any one of them says. There might be a very few people on this planet that can manage that from a true spiritual level, but most of them are just afraid of commitment. I've worked with many people that have come out of that severely wounded. It's a fear of commitment, or they're bored and they don't want to let go of one person, so they want to get out into another one because something's not being met. So I think we work on ourselves. We realize the relationship is with ourselves, and then we move into what we have with our partner from a point of real vulnerability, real honesty, real authenticity, and then move into like almost like a divine contract with the other person. Whether it's marriage, whether it's trad life, whatever is the next thing out there at the moment, going back to, you know, traditional Bible values, doesn't really matter. But I'd say, like, be with the person, be committed to them, honor them, you know, get rid of all whatever's the, you know, the woke left agenda and whatever next famous thing that or popular thing they're going to get caught up in. Get rid of the dating apps. Don't go to hookup culture. Quit alcohol, quit porn, quit anything that's mainly pushed, and then see what sort of person emerges, and then commit to your partner and go all in. And just go all in for a year, 2 years. Give 100%. Identify everything that is holding you back and transcend that, so you can move into an integrated aspect of yourself through the beautiful container that is the relationship. And that's what I think is really moving forward with that. My partner and I are working on that at the moment, and working through some of the more challenging pieces within myself that I'm going through at the moment. And she's being a beautiful vehicle as a committed partner to work through that with me. And so I think that's it, you know, is doing it together and coming together to be in that sacred, committed partnership, even through the difficulties. It's easy to be in a partnership when things are easy and it's all love and light, which is another bypass anyway. But when it gets difficult, that's where the things really show up. And I think that's what we're headed to. And I know that's where I'm at the moment, and that's what I'm in. And I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, same. I mean, I've never grown more than in a committed partnership, when you actually you plant your flag, you plant your feet, and you commit to moving through the energetic, you know, regardless of the outcome or what's happening. And this is the only container that can hold humanity, are men and women committed in divine union, because that's the only container that can raise the next generation to become healed and whole and manifest their greatness. So I say this all the time, like, if we could teach our children how to relate, and their mother and father had done this work, cleared the shadow, cleared the emotional traumas and the childhood attachment styles, and they actually have the tool set, those children will change the planet, because they won't have to carry that burden. And I feel like this is why the war on masculine and feminine is there, because, you know, some of these folks that have, you know, these Frankfurt School adherents, they're very clever, and they understand to destabilize the society, to create a working class, to create all this, you know, confusion. you have to take it out at the root, which is the family and the environment in which healthy children live. That's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what it is. Like, you know, we look at the sexual revolution in the 60s, that was an attack on the family unit. Feminism was an attack on masculinity. The gender movement is now an attack on children so the state can raise them, and it's an attack on femininity as well. You know, feminism attacked, you know, femininity as well as masculinity. It was more towards masculinity, though, to break that down. Sexual revolution was around the family unit, and now the transgender movement is around the family unit again, but it's around going after the kids. It's all about inversion, right? It's all about creating the opposite, which is really against natural law. You know, like a 5-year-old, I don't really care how much backlash I get from this, but like a 5-year-old shouldn't fucking choose their gender. And it's fucking ridiculous. If you're a parent, you're careless. If you're letting a 5-year-old go in to take chemical disruptors or hormone blockers, you fucking should be in jail, as far as I'm concerned. And I don't mind saying it like that, because children are innocent, and you're taking the innocence based on your own bullshit because you've been subconsciously programmed and brainwashed by a culture that's degenerate anyway. You know, and a 5-year-old doesn't know about gender dysmorphia. Their reasoning brain hasn't even come online yet, you know, and they're not able to make that. And so it's like a kid that is able to choose their gender or their name, for as an example, that they want to be called by. If you put me when I was 5 years old, I would have been, you know, fucking He-Man or Optimus Prime or something like that.
Right.
Transformers is probably a funny, you know, comparison here because it's transgender, but like at the same time, it would have been something like that, and I grew out of it a year or two later, you know? So to put the decision on kids like this provides, you know, incomplete parenting, and then they can be raised by the state. And that's what this is. That's what that movement is really looking at the moment.
Yeah, and this is it's frightening. And again, there's pressure for awakening here. There's an evolutionary bottleneck of men and women who will look at this and just by their gut, doesn't matter what their culture or their neighbors are saying, they know in their gut that it is against natural law and it cannot prevail. And so
yeah,
I'm optimistic about the future. And I'm curious for you, you know, there in Australia, is there a movement of people like yourself, like myself, the people we surround ourselves with, who are moving in that direction? And what are some of the tactical things? Like, is it about homesteading? Is it about creating communities? Or is it just about being where you are and making better decisions?
Yeah, I think like each person's going to be different, right? So it's like, there's a funny comment, if this was around when I was a kid, I'd be a deep sea ninja, you know, like, I mean, that's kind of like the relevance of it. So I think it's case to case basis on it. And I think like we don't want to react from a point of trying to get rid of a current system or fight against the current system. Awakening is one thing. Awareness is the most powerful tool that we can have. So we really have to go on an inner journey to understand what's best for us right now. I don't know what's going to happen with all of this. You know, I think the climate change narrative is going to really convert a lot of people into it, because COVID was pushing down really hard and woke a lot of people up. The climate change thing is a bit more difficult because it's been around for 50 years or something like that. So I think they might get the economic system in place, because this whole thing's about replacing a new financial system. That's what it's about. The old one's bankrupt. This is about a new one. So I think it's about honoring whatever is close within your unit and surrounding yourself people collectively that are on the same page. And I think just let that manifest, whether that's traditional lifestyle, homesteading, anything like that. Like, I don't have kids. If I had kids, I wouldn't be putting them into a schooling system.
Right.
You know, I just wouldn't be doing that. Or if they were to be, maybe Steiner school or something that invites more creativity. Or if I did put them into a public school, I wouldn't leave them there for very long. You know, I mean, I'd be telling them to tell the teacher to fuck off at 6 years old, you know, like, don't let the teacher tell you what to do. So it's a hard one, and each person needs to use discernment again to be able to really tap into what's best for them. But I think awareness is the most powerful tool. Know what's going on. Start separating yourself from the system that keeps everyone in prison and trapped, and keep doing the inner work. You know, just keep doing the inner work. The inner work's the most important thing that we can do. So I think it's about setting yourself up with the right people that are going to look after you and take care of you and connect and get your message out there in whatever way that is.
That's it. This is the freedom, the sovereignty that we all like inherently have, but to express it in the world is an inside job. And you can't wait for someone to give you permission or come and tell you that this is how you raise your kids, this is how you run your business, how you run your family. So
yeah,
that's a good word, brother. For people that want to get involved in your work, do you have another group cohort happening? I know you had one last time we spoke, and how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, I do. I've got another Free Your Mind group container coming up on the 15th. That's been super powerful. Like, that was my first group container. I was running two, one on a Saturday, one on a Sunday. I'm just going to be doing one moving forward. The amount of transformation that's happened in that group has just been profound. So I'm teaching my coaching methodology. I'm releasing people's trauma in that, shifting their awareness, expanding their mind. So it's been really powerful. I'm also going to be doing a men's only one for masculinity and helping them deal with their internal masculine programming on that. It'll be different to what's been done out there. It's not like a concept that's really been addressed, because it's how these deep subconscious programs and physics manifest as a masculine aspect in helping men overcome that. So I'm going to be doing that too at the start of November, maybe mid-November, we'll see. Also, my partner's doing, this is for the women, a womb clearing workshop coming up I think it's in 2 weeks. So her page is re.earthing. She's a powerhouse. So any woman that's had wants to clear energetic bonds or shame or guilt or anything, I won't talk into it too much because I'll let Luna do that. They need to go and do this because it's super important to clear the energetics of the womb out. So she's doing that. So anyone that's interested in that, share her page around, get people involved in it. It's super powerful. And I'm doing the Free Your Mind group container to help with the nature of physics in the mind. And then a men's container as well will follow a couple of weeks after that.
Amazing, brother. I'm so glad you're doing this work and that you're there in union with this amazing queen. I'm following her as well, and I would recommend everyone here go check out his page, Pure Jaguar. Go check out her at re.earthing. And yeah, man, can't wait till we meet in person one day, whatever that is. And yeah, just so glad you are here doing the work. You inspire me, and thanks for coming back on here, brother.
Yeah, thank you, brother. And thank you for the platform. And, I just really appreciate you and the work you're doing, and our groove, the way we go is awesome, man. You ask brilliant questions and really lead the conversation in an amazing way to get the best out of me. So thank you, brother. I appreciate you as always. And yeah, I hope one day we can meet.
That would be amazing. Family,
Awesome,
thanks
brother.
for joining live. If you're watching this later, type in replay, share this video. It's going to be posted on my page, so you can come back and watch the full set of codes here. And until next time, y'all, keep living free and doing that inner work. Big love, everyone.
Thanks, brother.